Hello children, Shubha teacher here. We are continuing chapter 5, Pollination and Fertilization. In the previous video, we had learnt about pollination, self and cross, followed by their advantages and disadvantages. Let's move on further with the topic in this video. We start with the 5 conditions in which nature favors cross pollination. The first is unisexuality in flowers. It means the flowers are having either male or female parts in them. Here are palm flowers. These are the male flowers of palm, and these are female flowers only present in a palm plant. So therefore, an agent of pollination is required to transfer the pollen grains from a male flower to the female flower. The next condition is dichogamy, which means the timings of maturation of androecium and gynoecium are different. Even if the flowers are bisexual, the timing of maturity of androecium and gynoecium differ. Dichogamy exists in 2 conditions, protandry and protogyny. Protandry, in which androeciums mature earlier, anthers mature earlier than the stigma. The protandrous flowers examples are ladyfinger and sweet pea. The next condition is protogyny. In case stigma matures earlier than the anthers, it is termed as protogyny. Protogynous flowers are of custard apple and peepal. The third condition is self-sterility. It means the flower is sterile for its own pollen grain. Even if the flower is bisexual, the pollen fails to grow on its own stigma. The examples of self-sterile flowers are ray florets of sunflower. This sunflower, if you remember in the previous videos, we had discussed about the 2 florets in sunflower, ray florets which are on its outer side, and at the center of the flower are the disc florets. Ray florets also have got stigma and anthers growing in it, but it is sterile for its own pollen grain. So therefore, it is also termed as neuter flowers. Orchids also are self-sterile flowers. The fourth condition is hercogamy. In this, there is a structural barrier in which the pollen cannot reach stigma. Due to the barrier, the pollen is unable to reach the stigma. This condition is seen in pansy flower and in iris. The fifth condition is heterostyly. Hetero, different style length. It is because of the length of style which is different. Stigma and anther grow at different heights. Let's look at the internal structure of primrose. Here you see this is the female part. The stigma here is quite above than the anther, which is deep inside the flower, and due to which even if the pollen grains move out, they are unable to fall on the stigma of the same flower. Here if you see, the style is very short, due to which stigma is quite deep within and anthers are on the outer side of the flower, due to which there are more chances of pollen grains falling out instead of falling on its own stigma. The same heterostyly condition exists even in oxalis. Now we move on to agents of cross-pollination. The agents are also called as pollinators. Here are 5 agents: insect, wind, water, bird, and elephant. When the pollination is carried out by insect, it is termed as entomophily. When pollination is carried out by wind, it is termed as anemophily. When water is the pollinator, it is termed as hydrophily. When pollination is carried out by birds, it is termed as ornithophily. And when it is carried out by elephants, the pollination is termed as elephophily. Let's discuss here some characteristics of entomophilous flower. Entomophilous, flower in which pollination is carried out by insects. Characteristics are, such flowers are large sized, like dahlia, so that they can be easily noticed by the insects. They are brightly colored. You can see here all the flowers are brightly colored so that they can be again easily seen, and the bright colors of the flowers can attract the insects towards it. Scent and nectar, these also attract insects towards the flowers. Nectar is the food of insects also. Pollen grains are sticky. It is so because so that when the insects visit the flowers, the pollen grains, due to its sticky kind, it sticks on the body of the insect. Sticky stigma is also seen in such flowers, so that when the insect carries pollen grains from one flower and it goes to visit another flower, the sticky stigma takes the pollen grains on it. And such entomophilous flowers grow in clusters, again so that they can be conspicuously seen and noticed by the flowers, by the insects. Entomophilous flowers are rose, jasmine, salvia, dahlia, etc. Anemophilous flowers, flowers in which the agent of pollination is wind. Such flowers are small in size so that they can be easily shaken by the wind. They are not brightly colored, they do not have scent or nectar, because these characteristics doesn't have anything to do with the wind. Stamens are long and hang out so that these stamens can be easily, they can easily come in contact with the wind. The anthers are large and loosely attached so that the pollen grains from here can easily get dislocated. Pollen grains are in large quantity produced by such flowers, because when wind carries pollen grains with it, and the moment the speed of wind lessens somewhere, there may be many pollen grains falling down on unfavorable places also, on unfavorable plants also. So, therefore, pollen grains are produced in large quantity. The pollen grains are light, dry, and smooth so that they can be easily carried by the wind. Stigmas are feathery and hang out so that the stigmas, you can see here, they are feathery so that the pollen grains can easily get trapped into it for the further process of reproduction. The examples of anemophilous flowers are in maize, grass, rice, wheat, etc. Hydrophilous flowers are those in which the agent of pollination is water. These flowers produce large number of pollen grains. Pollen grains float on the surface of water because the specific gravity of pollen grains are almost equal to that of water. This is Vallisneria plant, an aquatic plant in which the male flowers keep floating on the surface of the water till they meet the female flowers. Now we'll talk about artificial pollination. Artificial. When the transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma is carried out by man, then it is termed as artificial pollination. It is also called as artificial crossing because in this case, the man does a cross between two different kinds of varieties, and it is done by the plant breeders and scientists so that new varieties can be evolved. It includes certain steps. The first step is emasculation. It means removal of the male part of a flower. It is plucked by the male part of a flowers are plucked, and then these flowers are bagged, covered by a bag. They are covered by a bag, and then pollen grains of a desired variety are picked up as shown here by a brush, and it is sprinkled over the bagged flower. The bag is removed and it is sprinkled over the bagged flower, and then the further process of reproduction takes place and results into a new variety of flower. Here we have floral parts of sweet pea. Pea flower as a whole looks like this. Generally, a flower has got same kind of petals growing in it, but pea flower has got three different kinds of petals. The largest petal here, as you see, is called as standard petal. The next kind of petals, which are two in number, they are called as keel, and the smallest one are called as wing petals. They are two in number. So altogether, there are five petals in sweet pea. These stamens are showing diadelphous condition, group of two. Here you see 9 fused stamens and one is separate. We had discussed about the grouping of stamens before. And now we come to inflorescence in maize plant. If you remember, we had discussed about the sexuality of plants. Maize plant is a monoecious plant. It means it has got male and female flower growing separately in the same plant. So we have male inflorescence present in a maize plant, which is called as tassel, and male inflorescence is seen growing at the tip of the plant, and female inflorescence called as cob is seen growing at the axil of leaves, and these cob results in the formation of maize corn. So with this we come to the end of today's video. Let's do a quick recap. Today you learnt about the conditions that favor cross-pollination, agents of pollination, characteristics of insect, wind and water pollinated flowers. You also learnt about artificial pollination and its steps, floral parts of pea flower, and inflorescence in maize plant. That's all for today, children. We'll continue with this chapter in the next video. Thank you.